Welcome to another episode of the Redeemed Man podcast. I'm Nathan Dewberry, the director, and today I have David Griffin. David is a restaurant operator in Lake Charles, Louisiana, Chick-fil-A that he has down there. He and I grew up in the same small town in Alabama, so we have that connection in common. Thankful for David, and glad to have you on as a guest today.
Hey, thanks so much. It's good to catch up. Great to be a part of this.
We'll look forward to it. We're going to start out today with some rapid-fire questions, just so our guests get to know you a little bit. And these just go with your gut when I ask these. But favorite vacation spot?
Montana.
Favorite memory from childhood?
High school football.
Favorite restaurant when you're not eating at Chick-fil-A?
Oh gosh, my wife's cooking. I don't know. I want to go home and have a home cooked meal.
Love it. What verse of scripture has been one that's your go-to?
You got me on that one. I love Truett's. A good name is rather to be had than great riches. I think just in our society, it's meant a lot to me. We've been very fortunate, and I think that's my go-to right now.
So outside of your family, what person's had the most impact on your life?
I've been very fortunate to been surrounded by some great leaders. The one that really comes to mind is a guy by the name of Matthew Pless. And when I was in college, he led some focused men's development groups. And it kind of put me on the path that I'm on now, where I learned how much I enjoyed leadership development and kind of modeled my methods after his. So Matt's probably the number one guy.
Great. Thanks for answering those rapid questions. We'll kind of shift gears now. We always start our podcast with asking our guests, what does redemption mean to you? And part of that is just because, again, we're all about redemption and what that means in men's lives. So, even though there's a theological answer to it, there's always a personal answer.
Yeah, there's the Sunday school answer, and I can give you that. I can quote scripture. I can look it up in a dictionary and tell you those things. But like for me, redemption is making things right. Like when I think about our relationship with the Father, sin has separated us from Him. Redemption is making that relationship right. We talk about redeeming qualities in people's lives, and it's getting things back that are how they're intended to be and how they're healthy. That's my own internal answer. Just making things right.
Great. Along with those lines, thinking about redemption and a personal redemption, can you tell me and our listeners a little bit about your own journey of faith and how you've come to grow in your relationship, and then also how you ended up being a Chick-fil-A operator? A lot of people ask those questions, have that desire. It's amazing the number of people go, I'd love to do that one day, but they often don't understand the full process. So I'd love for you to share a little bit of your journey of faith and then how you end up being a business owner.
Yeah. So very fortunate that I was raised in a home where it was expected you go to church on Sundays. And so, my parents, my mom was a church organist for 30 years. My dad was a deacon. He still is. My brother's a deacon in the same church we grew up in that small town in Alabama. So just growing up, going to church was a part of life. But I really didn't start to explore my own beliefs until, late high school, early college, because it was just normal, and I never questioned what I believed. In college, it was kind of, hey, well, why do I believe this? And so spent several years bouncing around to different denominations, just trying to figure out, okay, is this what I really believe? And, there was never a quote unquote moment, but just, I guess, life experiences. You're familiar with the friend that we both lost in high school, my senior year. That was the first time that I had experienced loss. He passed away tragically from injuries sustained in a car accident. And that was the first time I ever questioned, okay, what is this life after death? We're not immortal. We're human. Things can happen. And I think that was the first time I ever questioned it. And then I've always believed in the Trinity. I've always believed Father, Son, Holy Spirit. To this day, I've never questioned it. But I guess it was, why do I believe that? And so spent a lot of years in college, and we talked about Matt. And I was fortunate to have some mentors who just walked me along the growth process. And I've experienced things. My wife had some precancerous scares early in our marriage. There's things that I have prayed about that didn't come to fruition, and I would ask why. And as you age, it's your perspectives change. And I think when we stay grounded in that faith, even when it's hard or we don't understand it, I think God molds those perspectives to where we have deeper understandings. And where we don't understand, I think we have an acceptance of, hey, this is something I may not understand for a while, but I've learned to trust that God has a plan. And I've found the most fulfillment and the most joy in life when I've tried to stay near to that plan. Obviously made choices and decisions growing up that weren't always the best, but just always seem to find my way back to my faith, and it's interesting. You kind of tie that to being an operator. I do believe God has callings in our lives. Something that we talk about. My wife and I have a group we call the Legacy Group, and it's based around, and we'll talk about it in a minute, just like our calling of foster kids and community development, things like that. And our question is, what are you doing with the time, talent, treasure? And to me, the fourth and most important is your life experience.
Yeah.
Because, you and I have talked, we've both been through some stuff, and, your listeners have all been through some stuff. And it's like, don't lose the value of your story. And so what are you doing with that story? And so I think God has a calling, and I think part of our responsibility is in seeking to grow our relationship with Christ, to find that calling. I think the world needs us to discover our calling, because there's a purpose there. And
no, David, that's so good, especially when you talk about the story and how that relates. And I think it's essential for people to find that their story has meaning, because a lot of times they feel like, hey, the brokenness or whatever they've gone through, whether good or bad, maybe doesn't have purpose, but yet your story is woven into the story of God and can be used in a powerful way to make an impact, because we all relate to somebody else's story. We find ourselves in somebody else's story. So good. Absolutely.
And it's just, show me somebody who's never been through trials, and show me somebody who has had things easy, per se. Yeah. And I think you're going to find they find it hard to connect to other people.
Yeah.
And we talk about our callings in life. I think stewardship it's a very biblical principle. I think the thing that we're called to steward the most is our relationships.
Yeah.
Possessions, yes, those things are important. They're tools to further the kingdom, but Christ didn't die for our tools. He died for each other, and we talked about Matt a while ago and just his influence in my life. At that age, I realized real quick that I wanted to do something that helped me develop others. And I wanted to get into business. I studied engineering in college, did graduate and undergraduate, thinking I'd be an engineer, start up a firm, have 20 or 30 people working in our organization. And that's not the route I went. So, engineering went straight into selling chicken, which fully qualifies you for nothing, but I say college taught me how to learn. It proved that I could set out to do things that were hard academically. But the calling was about people. And you and I have a mutual friend back home who had married someone who had become a Chick-fil-A operator, and we ran into each other at Christmas one year. Got to talking. Long story short, when I was in grad school, I started working part-time on the weekends for a guy in Birmingham. Started the process. Took me about 5 years to be selected. 13 interviews over 5 years. Ended up having to walk away from the public utilities company that I was working for, and left a really good salary, and went back to making $11 an hour with no benefits. So, it was a huge risk, and we tell a lot of our staff, sometimes the only person who's going to take a risk on you is you, and if you're not willing to risk it on you, don't ask anybody else to. And so I joke with my dad. He was deployed to Iraq when he found out I had quit my engineering job to go be an assistant manager at a quick service restaurant. And he struggled with that one for a little bit, because that's just not the natural progression. But I think he sees now it was the right decision. But the best part of being an operator is you get a lot of autonomy in how you run your organization. And I've chosen to focus my style on leadership development. Like, that's what I do. I sell chicken to develop leaders. It's my platform. So that's kind of how I got into it. Yeah, but it wasn't quick, and I didn't start at the top. I took a very low volume mall unit that was struggling, and it's since been closed. But I joke that I'm a 20-year overnight success. So that's how I got here.
And how long have you been now there at the Lake Charles location?
We opened up August of 2011, so we're coming up on 12 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, 12 years. Yeah.
Well, I know Lake Charles has had its fair share of challenges in the last few years, and then service industry with COVID. I would love to hear, as a leader, how have you navigated some of those challenges? What's been the most challenging about that season? Because your community was really hurting. I mean, you guys had major hurricane followed by another major hurricane, correct? I mean, it was pretty devastating.
We had 5 natural disasters in 9 months. If you include COVID. So COVID started March of 2020. Hurricane Laura was August of 2020 as a Category 4 when it came on shore. We lost our house and our barn. Didn't think I'd be homeless at this point in life, but that's what kind of happened. And then we had pretty bad winter storm, which normally wouldn't have been an issue except for all the homes that had been damaged and nobody was there. When all the pipes froze, it put such a demand on the water system for the parish that homes no longer had water. So even if your house was working, you couldn't get water. So we went for over a week without water. So we call it just the winter storm. And then a few weeks later, we had a flood. We had all the water we wanted. And I'll never forget driving down the main highway, getting passed by a boat in the middle of the road, and I drive a pretty big truck, and I had water coming over the hood of my truck. And it was interesting. But we tell people you gotta have some grit if you're gonna live in South Louisiana, South Mississippi, along the Panhandle. I'm sure you got a lot of listeners in those areas. They know what we're talking about. It can be rough. It's not if the storms come; it's when they storm. And there's a lot of parallels for life there. So yeah.
Well, how'd you lead your organization through that with the fact that I'm sure there was a lot going on with trying to balance what you needed to take care of at home, trying to make sure everything was set with the business, and then also caring even for your employees. Because I know when you have a team, you feel like you're responsible and you're wanting to meet their needs. So how did you manage that season? Because I'm sure it would put a lot of strain on you.
Absolutely, yes. It was some of the darkest days of my life. And it was just because there is that sense of responsibility for people who have been loyal to you and just who have helped get you to where you're at professionally. I'll never forget asking Kimberly. I needed her to go back to Alabama, which is where we're originally from. And I'm like, I don't know how long you'll be gone, but I just need to let you do what I need to do. I need you to let me do what I need to do. And I knew that we would have to focus on our team first. Fortunately, Chick-fil-A has got an incredible support network. They came in and said, hey, don't worry about your facilities. We're good with that. My home office contact said, you take care of your team and your family. I'll take care of everything else. And so there's something to be said for just choosing to, who do you surround yourself with, but yeah, I knew my family was safe. They stayed with family and friends. They were gone for about 6 weeks. And, we focused on, first off, finding our team. The Monday before Hurricane Laura, I had 114 on staff. And when we opened back up, I had 27. And it's because that many people had relocated. They were just gone. My team of 114 scattered to 9 different states. We had insurance policies in place, and then just the Cathy family and the Chick-fil-A family were very generous to send funding. Our team never missed a paycheck. The entire time we were closed, operators and Chick-fil-A family came in together, and if team members had a deductible for insurance for their home, they paid it. So none of our team members had to pay any insurance deductibles for their homes. And it was just the spirit of going back and meeting physical needs. I spent the first couple of weeks driving around. I have auxiliary fuel tanks in the back of my truck for our farm, making sure all of our team members who were here had food, water, ice when we could get it. Like Southwest Louisiana, I've been to third world countries, so I can compare it. Southwest Louisiana became a third world country. There was no cell service. There was no power. There was no water. There was no fuel. You couldn't get any of those things. And so we had to make sure the people that were here, we were meeting their physical needs. And a lot of those people are still with us, just in the way we were able to show care. But we were able to show care because of our support network. So just focusing on the people, that's where it started. Yeah.
Well, thank you for serving your team that way. I know, it's awesome to be able to take the lead and show initiative and to have an organization around you that comes and supports you as well. Obviously, Chick-fil-A's rich heritage, faith background, but when we're talking about faith in the workplace, no matter if it's an organization that's known for its faith or an organization that's not, us living out our faith daily in the workplace can be a very challenging thing.
Yeah.
How do you personally live out your faith in your work environment? Because I know it not only is there as leading your restaurant, but then also your wife is involved with businesses, your community involvement. How do you serve your community and impact through the work that you do and show your faith?
Yeah. We are very grounded in our church. And so we're very public figures in the sense, like with the restaurants and her businesses, people know who we are just because we're in a lot of circles. Our church is our main circle. And if people want to have those discussions, we're happy to share our faith with them. We make it a point to not force it on anybody. I've just found that forcing just tends to have the opposite effect of what I'm looking for. In our business, so I've got about 100 people on staff. In our business, I think it's just in the way we present ourselves to people. I found most people don't want you coming in preaching the gospel, but they do want you to meet their needs and to let them know that you care for them. And I think when you start to meet needs, whether it's, the way you make people feel, the way you help provide stability for them, and you can build those relationships, to us, that's when we start to open up doors to where it's like, hey, if people want to talk, they know they can come talk to us. They know my beliefs. They know what I'm grounded in. We try and be very consistent, like things like you're never going to hear me yell at people. You're never going to hear me use language at people. Our team has learned to trust that we do have their best interest in mind. Yeah. And I think when people can trust that you do care for them, they're more apt to receive what you have to say. And making sure that we're not coming across judgmental. We have some people that live very different lifestyles than what I do. And while I may not think it's okay, I'm not there to judge them. I don't think that's how I minister to people. It's more of, let me meet you where you are. And if you ask my opinion, I'll share that, hey, I don't think this lifestyle is appropriate. I don't think these decisions are appropriate. But I don't just come charging in and saying, hey, you're wrong. I think people need to feel loved before they'll open up to you. And so it's, how do we share the love of Christ without accepting sin? Without saying, hey, sin is okay. It's not, but I think
we've all done it.
Absolutely. Yes. But I think you have to lead with love. And so a huge part of what we do is trying to understand people. We have such a multi-generational culture in our business. I've got people in their late 60s. I've got 15-year-old kids working for us. And so as leaders, I think we have a due diligence to the people who are in our organization to learn. Yeah. And just because you're different than me doesn't mean you're less valuable, and, but understanding the Y gen, the X gen, the millennials, like you've got to do research and bring in third parties to come in and teach you about what is this generation looking for. I think that's how you start to show love to those generations.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue, because one of the questions I've been thinking about is knowing that Chick-fil-A hires a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And our culture, there's a lot of negative said about the younger generations. As a leader, what are you seeing positive in the generation that's up and coming?
I'm guilty of having negative thoughts about young generations. I mean, when we were kids, we'd hear our grandparents say, well, my generation would have never done that. And I'm like, I'm in my mid-40s. Now I'm saying, well, my generation would have never done that. And it's just like, wait, I'm getting older, I think your youngest generations are some of the most capable people, from They're much more able to process information. Multitasking is just how they survive. Not even survive, it's just how they are. Like they can do social media and academics, and they can just intertwine everything together to whereas I'm not good at that, you know? And so I think the youngest generations are the most capable. They communicate very different than middle-aged generations and older generations. You know, we talk about, sometimes I'll have older people come in and say, hey, I'm in my 60s or, you know, even 70s, you know, you wouldn't need anybody like me. I'm like, oh, no, I do. Because what you know how to do is talk to people one-on-one. You know, they may not know anything about computers or how to serve 3,500 guests a day, but for that one-on-one communication, it's phenomenal. And they can influence the younger generation. The younger generations are the ones who, if you give them a problem, they're going to be able to find a solution to it. And it's probably not going to be through traditional problem-solving methods. You know, we used to joke, hey, you can just go Google something. Well, now they're so far beyond that. Sometimes I'm just trying to keep up with them. I mean, my 6-year-old kid can do as much on an iPad as I think I can, you know, and it's just like they're learning at such a faster pace. And it's up to us to learn to harness that talent. And what they still need, though, is that one-on-one interaction from people who are loving and who do have their interest in mind, because we do have a lot of young kids that they don't come from the best home life. You know, they don't have the best positive influences. I use the analogy, I think that you're the summation of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if they're not getting that positive influence at home, are we able to provide it for them in their work environment? So, you know, I don't think we need to shun these youngest generations. Like they're the up and coming leaders of tomorrow. We've got to learn how to influence them in a positive way, but recognize who they are and what they bring to the table.
Well, leadership is influence. And what I know you have people come and go in with employment. How have you seen your impact in people's lives long after they left Chick-fil-A?
That's where, you know, we organizationally, we say, I think 99.9% of the people who come into my organization, we're a stepping stone in their life. You know, most people don't aspire to work in a quick service restaurant for an entire career.
Right.
Those opportunities are there and they can be very rewarding, but that's not what most people are pursuing. And so it's up to us to figure out, what are you looking for? How can we come alongside and help you become the best version of yourself? And it really is about investing in people. And you may not become the best version of yourself while you're with me, but if we can impart the importance of always learning, always growing, valuing relationships, that's what I want them to carry when they move on. If that's what you get in your time with me, I feel like we've succeeded. Because not a lot of them are getting that outside of work. We talk about the value of people. We have to be careful when we say, hey, I don't think so-and-so is valuable to the organization. We talk about the value of the person and the value of their contribution, and we have to distinguish between the two. I think we're all created equal. I think Christ died for all of us. And in doing so, you can't say, oh, so-and-so is no good.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, hey, your contribution is not what we're looking for. We love you. We value you. I cannot use your contribution. And so that's one example of how do we teach people to view others. And my hope is that they move on, they get into leadership roles, they get into academics, you know, teaching, the medical field, legal field, whichever way they go, they still maintain the value of people. That's what I'm trying to get them to understand.
Awesome. I'm thinking about your leadership and thinking about the impact you're making. Love what you're doing there with leadership. Who has impacted your own personal leadership the most?
It's you know, we talked about Matthew. I think what was important with him is he did a lot of the one-on-one stuff. He wasn't afraid to challenge you. He was transparent in his own struggles. You know, I don't want a perfect leader. I want authentic. I want somebody who has been through some stuff and has the life experiences. So I use Matthew. But then from a business standpoint, I try to find the people who are where I want to be in 5 to 10 years. And fortunately, a lot of Chick-fil-A operators are successful in their home, share similar family values. Yeah, I go back to Truett. I mean, Truett was a phenomenal guy. He was not easy to work for, but nobody questioned his heart. He was big into valuing people. Anything from his wind-shaped homes to how generous he was to people who might not have had opportunities unless he could provide them for them. But he had high expectations for people. You know, it wasn't charity. He had high expectations, but his rewards were high, and just how he treated people. I was fortunate in his last few years of life, I got to spend some time with him and just ask him hard questions. And I had heard somebody at one point say, hey, when you're the most powerful person in the room, what do you do? And he goes back to, I think of Christ. And he's like, when Jesus washed the feet of those who served him, he really modeled servant leadership. And so guys like Matt, guys like Truett, seeing them value people and model servant leadership has been the biggest influencer in how I'm trying to approach my leadership roles.
That's awesome. I think I see that in what you're doing with your family. You and your wife have fostered kids. You've adopted some of those kids that you've fostered. Yep. You serve in your community. You've given tremendously to McNeese State. I know there's other things that probably no one even knows that you've done to serve your community. And I think that part of your stewardship that you mentioned earlier is something that people see. And I think just as you mentioned, that door opens to be able to share the why.
Right.
And that when we serve, the door opens for us to share the why we do what we do, the why we live the way we live, the why we care for people and value people the way we do. So thank you for serving your community, for being the hands and feet of Christ there, for loving your employees well. I know they see that. And how do you manage, though? Your wife is running businesses. You have a business. You have kids. Tell us a little bit about your kids. But then, I cannot imagine your life and how you keep it all moving forward and make sure that you're picking up the right kid from the right location.
Hey, believe it or not, it's happened numerous times where that didn't happen. We actually left one of our kids at daycare over an hour. We walk in and 3 kids are at home, and it's an hour past when daycare closes. And we're like, where's Charlotte? And my wife and I look at each other like, okay, Charlotte's 2. We're like, no. And like, that's all I said. I'm spinning tires, leaving the driveway, and I get to daycare an hour and 11 minutes past when they closed. And bless her, the director was still there. She's like, I figured something happened. We're good. But yeah, we had left our kid at daycare well over an hour past they closed. But no, it's hard, but it's also easy. It's hard. Between the two of us, we have 7 businesses that we own. Our kids are 6, 5, 4, and 2.
You just made some people pass out just by telling them that.
Yeah, and they're all adopted, so they're all fostered. In the past 6 years, we've fostered a total of 14 children while doing all that other stuff. Going through the hurricanes, the natural disasters. Yeah, that's what I mean by it's hard, but here's the filter. Schedule what's important to you. There's only 24 hours a day. There's only 7 days a week. I tell my team, it only takes me 29 hours a day, 9 days a week to get it all done. Which means you're never going to get it all done. Matthew taught me, show me your calendar and show me your checkbook, and I'll show you your priorities. Most days we have to ask the question, what's not going to get done today? I think a lot of people say, hey, what all can I get done today? We have to prioritize and say, hey, what's not going to get done? It is important to me that I get my kids dressed in the morning, that I feed them breakfast in the morning, that I drop them off at school. So either Kimberly or I are doing one or the other. She's a great mom. It is not easy. There's a lot of days when she has hard days, and I have hard days. Like if anybody thinks we don't, we've got you fooled, But there's got to be that tag team there of we both value the kids. My work day will not start until they're all dropped off from school. if I need to get stuff done before then, I have to do it before they get up. So sometimes I'm getting up. Twice last week, I was up at 2 a.m. in the morning working. I schedule around my kids. I do my best to make sure my wife and I have date night every week. So tonight we're going to a college baseball game. Going to have a romantic hot dog and just, cheer on the McNeese Cowboys, and if we can't do date night, we try to have date lunch. So my wife is my priority, my kids are my priority, and I build everything else around them. And could we have grown faster in some of our businesses? Absolutely. That also goes back to I rely on people. I do. My truest philosophy was hire the best people you can hire, trust them, don't micromanage them, let them make mistakes. But when you spend your professional hours developing people, if they're honest and have integrity, they're going to run the business how you like to see it run. Will they always do things the way that you want them done? No. And that's okay. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get a result. And how we get there can be 100 different paths. But, I have found the more that I trusted people and the more that I empowered my team, the more our businesses grew. At Chick-fil-A this year, we'll have our best year ever by, it's a significant growth. It's our biggest year of growth so far, year to date. And my team is doing it, and I give them 100% of the credit. They work really hard, but it lets me be dad, which is all I really want. Yeah. I want to be dad. I want to be a husband. And so schedule your priorities, don't make excuses. You'll never get all the work done. It's not going to happen. So, and your kids are only kids for a little while. We were just talking about, I remember when your kids were born and you're talking about your oldest is 16. And I'm like, where did those years go? My 2-year-old will only be 2 for a little bit longer. And I'm already missing the things my 6-year-old did. Yeah. He was my little buddy when we first got him. He was the first kid we fostered. And I see how fast it's going. And I'm like, I'm not going to grow a business at the expense of missing out on age 2, 3, 4, and 5. When I do business trips, last week I was in Atlanta for 3 days. I took my 6-year-old with me. The time before that, I took my 5-year-old with me. They go with me. So they'll sit in chairs at the home office or wherever we're at, and so we've got cots. I got a cot up under my desk here. Kimberly has cots at her office. If we need to go get them from school, we drop what we're doing and we go get them. So just schedule it. Make it the priority and don't make excuses. That's it.
Well, I love how you guys are prioritizing your family and making sure that you're staying in check as a couple too, with date night each week. And because I know at the end of the day with kids in business, sometimes it is the marriage that is sacrificed first, not intentionally, I think, but I think most people think they're strong enough or we don't need this time. And you guys prioritizing that is so key to creating a home life that gives those kids the security that they long for. Right. So it makes a huge difference. As a dad, how are you preparing your kids to live out their faith in the future?
Cool. That might be the biggest challenge of it all. It is because I'm still sinful. I'm still human. I have hard days, and the people who you live with are the ones who see it the most. Yep. Because you come home and you can put on a game face all day long at work, but your kids see who you really are. And so the challenge is staying out in front of the things that trip me up, staying out in front of stress, staying out in front of the lack of sleep or things like that, because I know I tend to be at my lowest points when I let those things get out of whack. And so it's making sure that I'm caring for myself. But then too, and even bigger, that's important, but even bigger than that is the consistency. During COVID, we got out of church for a while, and it's not that we were trying to get out of church, but we weren't meeting as a corporate congregation, and I'm not really an online guy. So there was about a year and a half there, we just weren't in church. And Kimberly was like, hey, it was Father's Day 2021. And she's like, hey, what do you want for Father's Day? And I'm like, honestly, I just want to get back in church, because I could tell my kids were nowhere around the church environment. And I knew that was missing. And so the consistency that I saw growing up of, hey, church life is a part of our life, and just going to church isn't the answer. It's a piece of the puzzle. And so it's being consistent in, hey, we're always going to be in church. Hey, it's being consistent in, we talk about scripture. It's being consistent in the school that they're in. We purposely chose because it's a faith-based academia. It's I think it's probably the best school down here. But not everybody can afford to send their kids to private school. That's okay. But if you can get your kids into academia where it's faith-based, I think that's a piece of the puzzle if you can do it. Letting them see how I treat Kimberly, there's days we go at it, and like we have hard days sometimes as a couple, but seeing the love that I have for her and the mutual respect that I have for her, there's no one magic pill that prepares your kids, for that faith-based walk. But I think when I was a kid, the things that I saw that kept me grounded as I grew up as an adult, that's what I'm trying to model for them is, hey, we're always going to be in church. We're not going to make excuses just because you're tired, because you stayed out late at a ball game on Saturday. That's not an excuse not to go to church. We're going to serve our community, as Christ served others. We're going to learn to serve in the church. We're going to learn to do sacrificial giving. Think about that. If the church as a whole actually sacrificially gave, what would that do from a resource standpoint for the church? So, teaching about sacrificial giving, and trying to model those things. How do we treat each other? How do we treat our family, our friends, our neighbors? The concept of people's value is not based on how we see them, but it's how Christ sees them. So when you see somebody who's different than you, or who might not have the things you have and the experiences you have, they're no less valuable. And it's because Christ has died for them as well, So we have those conversations, but you got to have it at a kid level, 6, 5, 4. Yeah. We're trying to be consistent in those things.
You mentioned when you were talking about that, about taking care of yourself. So I'm curious, what does David do when he has downtime to rejuvenate and refresh?
You're going to think I'm so country.
You are country. You're from Longville, Alabama.
I know. I like to watch Gunsmoke. But no, what's good for me is I enjoy the outdoors. You and I are both avid outdoorsmen. We both grew up in a similar lifestyle. Upland game hunting, bird hunting, I enjoyed that. And now, so I was really excited. I took my oldest on his first hunt this year. I took Kimberly on 2 hunts this year. So anything that gets me outdoors, if I'm on the water, if I'm out in the field, a lot of the guys who I work with professionally, like there's a group of 14 of us that we'll go up to Kansas once a year for 3 or 4 days. We'll go to Texas for 3 or 4 days a year. And it's a brotherhood. It's people who understand your stresses. Some of them are a little bit further ahead in life than you are, so they've got a lot of wisdom. Anything that gets me outdoors with people who are more wise than I am, so I can have good conversation, but we're enjoying the outdoors, sign me up. That's where I want to be. And now that my kids are able to start doing it, you know how it is when you take your kids hunting and they harvest their first trophy or their first animal, or sometimes you don't see a thing, but just the best conversations you have with a 6-year-old, or you got a 16-year-old now. I see the farm life that your parents have tried to create, and I'm like, that's a family that gets it. It's outdoors with their family, with friends, and just building relationships. That's where I want to be. Yeah.
Yeah. When we did the rapid questions, you mentioned your favorite vacation spot was Montana, and yes. I remember you coming back from going to Glacier and talking about how amazing it was and breathtaking. And I got to take my kids there a couple of years ago, and just remembered the conversation and the influence you had just coming back talking about how amazing it was. And it is by far, of all the places we've gone, it's been our most memorable family vacation, just to be able to go and see an amazing landscape and enjoy that. And it's definitely good with the people you go with. And you also mentioned kind of brotherhood, and the Redeem, that's what we're all about, is helping men find those relationships. Because if we aren't careful, we won't cultivate those. We won't grow those. As you know, you can just let life get busy and not calendar those activities.
Yeah. No, you just said calendar. You have to schedule it. Like The guys that I fellowship with in Kansas, I've already paid for that trip for 2024.
Yeah.
And Kimberly is very supportive of it. Now that she hunts, she wants to go, but she'll tell you, I come back rejuvenated. She sees the difference. And so my fall hunt is scheduled. Our family vacations are scheduled. Like we do a family vacation once a quarter. It may be 3-day getaway. It may be 10 days in another state, but it goes back to scheduling your priorities. Put it on the calendar, pay for it in advance to where you're not carrying that debt if you can. But the fellowship is so key. Guys, like, we can be the best at it and the worst at it of, I'm good. No, I'm good. Like, hey, how you doing today? I'm good. It's like, but are you really? Because I'm a guy and I know I'm not good. Yeah. And a lot of us are going through the same struggles or similar struggles. And you can be on a desert island sometimes, for the longest time down here, not being from here, I struggled to build relationships that were not work related.
Yeah.
Because I was so dedicated to what I was doing professionally, it was just hard to find that group of guys that I could identify with. Because I'm like, well, nobody understands my role. Nobody understands my stressors. Nobody knows what I'm going through. And while they may not know the specifics, they're probably going through something too,
Exactly.
And that's what I enjoy about the guys who I hunt with is some of them are going through stuff. Some of them have been through some tragic loss. Some of them have been through tremendous marital problems that they just couldn't recover from, and they're willing. We're in a trusted environment and they're willing to open up about it, and so part of the reason I value date night with my wife, do I always feel like doing it? No. Does she always feel like doing it? No. But we talk to those that we value their wisdom, and they're like, dude, hey, above all, you have to protect your marriage, and sometimes it's hard, because yes, I love my wife dearly, but we still butt heads. We are two different people, I think we make a great team, but we're also make a great team because we're different people. And so when those differences come, if we don't have that equity invested into the relationship, it makes it hard. And we've had some hard years. We've been married 11 years now. And there's been some hard years, just in that short amount of time. But I'd like to think we're at our strongest we've ever been. Still hard, It takes work. And you know that. I mean, I think most of the guys listening know that. But prioritize your wife. Yeah.
It takes work, and you gotta make that choice daily to, like you said, put others before yourself, see value in others, especially your spouse, who is, the things that you're attracted to in the beginning are the differences, and yet when you were married for a while, those are the things driving you crazy.
Yeah, it's like, when are you going to change? It's like, I'm not. That's what you married. Yeah. But I think it's important that we support our spouses in finding what rejuvenates them.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that Kimberly's like, hey, if you want to go hunting for 3 days, take off. And, I try and encourage her to go spend some time with her girlfriends. I'm like, I got the kids. We're good. The house may be a wreck when you get back, but we're all alive, and go, and make it happen for your spouse, help them find what rejuvenates them. The core people that you rely on, find ways to help them rejuvenate. My top guy, he's been with me for 11 years. I'm paying for his entire family to go to Disney World for 7 days in May, just to say, hey, dude, thanks for sticking with me. You've been with me when we were short-staffed. You've been with me when I was a jerk, just because I was so stressed out and didn't know how to process my emotions. Like, you stood by me. He was the first person I saw after Hurricane Laura. When I'm sitting out in my pasture and my house is just destroyed, and I'm shaking, because it's trauma. I see now that it was trauma. He was the first guy that pulled up, so it's like, hey, take your family and go rest and rejuvenate, your inner circle, make sure you're talking to them and not high level stuff, like get into the deep stuff, that's the stewarding relationships.
David, that's great wisdom. Last thing I really would love for you to share, is there any leadership insight that you think at the end of the day, if I'm an up and coming business leader or just a person who knows I have influence, what is that bit of information you would give them that you feel like is one of the greatest tools that you've learned as a leader?
Well, I get 1 point. All right. Leadership is about it's about relationships. Your top leaders, yes, you want them to get results. You have to be willing to invest in people, knowing people will fail, people will let you down, people will leave. If we're thinking from an organizational standpoint, there may come a day when they outgrow your organization. In stewarding people, investing in who they are, it's not just telling them your wisdom, but it's putting forth your time, your emotion, sometimes your money, your assets, defining what does it mean to truly sacrificially invest in people, knowing that as humans, we're flawed. Yeah. Managing your expectations of people. And I'm not talking about their performance. Don't invest in somebody just because of what you get out of them. As leaders, we have resources and life experiences. It goes back to the legacy concept. What are you doing with your time, talent, treasure, and life experiences to pour into people? You've heard the phrase, we stand on the giants that come before us. I can name the giants of my life that I am where I am in no small part because of their sacrifice to help me get here. As leaders, we've got to pay that forward. You truly want to have influence. You have to be willing to give and expect nothing in return. You have to be saying, what can I give or do that sets the next generation up for success? We grew up in the country. We got country terms. You're planting trees in shade that you may never sit in. Yeah. I heard somebody say it a while back, like, I'm building a kingdom. I'm not building a castle. Having a bigger perspective than what's right here in front of me and what's in my generation. Your perspective has to go further than that. And understanding you may make decisions that impact people you never meet in places that you never go. I heard somebody say leadership is taking people you never thought could go there to places they never thought they could go for reasons they never thought they had or never knew they had. It's having that vision for what's bigger and then purposefully investing in people to get them there. Knowing they may never say thank you. You may never see 1 ounce of return from it, but keeping that perspective of that's what leaders do. And
it's very apparent that's how your faith is lived out in the workplace. You are investing in people. And at the end of the day, when you look at Christ's life and you see how he lived, it was about people and about relationships and about serving. And leadership is most often about what you give, not what you receive. And you're practicing that daily with what you do there, leading your business, loving your family, serving your community. Love what you're doing with legacy and leaving a legacy for your kids, and not only for your kids, but for the kids of your employees, those around you, relationships and the friends you have, not only to this generation, but hopefully many generations to come. I mean, it's impressive. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for loving and serving well. Thank you for making a difference there in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and around the world. I mean, you are, just by the way you're living your life there, you and Kimberly and the kids, and excited to hear what you have in store and what God's going to do. So it's going to be fun. Thanks for being on the show today. Thanks for having me. Fellow Clay Countyan in the show from Alabama. It's a pleasure. Great to connect today. Thank you for sharing your insight, and we welcome you back anytime you want to join us.
Hey, thank you so much, Nate. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. God bless, man.
Yeah, see you, man. Okay.